Very excited to get right into it. Now, this event is supposed to be a great discussion, hopefully to answer any burgeoning questions you may have. But I think it's a lot better for a discussion to see people's faces. So if you guys are comfortable, this is a recorded session, but if you guys are comfortable to show your faces for this dialogue, then please feel free to do so. And I will be kicking it off with a quick land acknowledgement. All right. Is everyone able to see my screen? Can I get a thumbs up?
Yes.
All right, lovely. Okay. So Roots Community Services acknowledges that the land on which we gather and which we operate is the traditional territory of many Indigenous peoples, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. We recognize and appreciate their historic connection and contributions to this country. It's this recognition that must tie in with our commitment to make the challenge of truth and reconciliation real in our communities. We are still currently in what's declared as the International Decade for People of African Descent by the United Nations, which is ending this year. And its objectives revolve around acknowledgement of the diverse heritage, culture, and contributions of people of African descent for societal development. As such, we must continue to work collectively to eliminate all forms of racial and indigenous discrimination. So let us uplift each other, uplift ourselves, and uplift a respectful society and event tonight for us all. Today, we have a few facilitators. So first we have Lillian Hushey and Anita Baudu, which are the facilitators and community health ambassadors, a part of Roots Community Services, my colleagues. We also have our main facilitator, Maggie Millwood, who is the Holistic Nutritionist, who is also from Perfect Health Solutions. She will be hopefully answering a lot of health-related questions that you guys may have. And we also have support from some of the other team members, a part of the High Priority Community Strategy, or HPCS team, a part of Roots. I'm going to pass it to Lillian. She is going to tell you a little bit about Roots before we begin.
Good evening, everyone. So nice to see everybody here. So I'm just gonna let you guys know who we are. We are Roots Community Services. As you see on the screen, it says we're a multi-service and program provider for the BAC community, which stands for the Black, African, and Caribbean community. We are a nonprofit organization that really focuses on a pathway to wellness, as we have designed and developed ways to really enhance the well-being of our clients using anti-racism, anti-oppression, and an inclusive lens. Roots really strives to make sure that the BAC community feels included and feels relevant. We do a lot of work with our clients to make sure that as time goes on, we don't feel like the services that we may not get in the region like other people do. We try and make sure that Roots gives it to our people and we don't feel that huge discrepancy in receiving services. We have a mission, vision, and values. Our mission at Roots is to provide culturally relevant programs and services to inspire and empower individuals, primarily from the Black, African, and Caribbean communities, to make positive changes in their lives and within their community. Our vision is to lead in the transformation that would ensure equity, equality, and inclusion for Black, African, and Caribbean communities throughout Canada. Some of our values are community focused, trust, accountability, collaboration, compassion, integrity, and inclusivity. So that's what we are made up of. And when we go out there and we're helping clients and we're helping families, we really make sure that we are exemplifying these values and exemplifying the mission that we are on and the vision that we see for the BAC community. So as we said, Roots provides a whole variety of services. Coming up in the summertime is a Peel Black Health and Social Service Hub. It aims to improve healthcare experiences for racialized people to improve health outcomes. It connects people to a team of primary care facilitators, mental health, social services. We're really focused on providing those wraparound services to the BAC community that when you go into the Ontario healthcare system, you find are lacking. We are making sure that we are bringing people that are going to screen for prevalent illnesses that are very predominant in the BAC community, such as breast cancer, diabetes, hypertension. And like I said, we're expected to open in the summer of 2024, which is this year. So Roots has a plethora of services that we provide to anybody and everybody to aid them in their pathway of wellness. On the slide, obviously you see the hub, but the hub is not the only thing we provide. We have diabetes clinics that we go to. We have educational organizations and support groups that we refer to people, such as the Olive Branch of Hope, which deals with cancer for women, and the Walnut Foundation, which deals with cancer for men, like prostate cancer. We also have, as a team, the HPCS team. We are also working on a lot of initiatives that are catered to the BAC community, such as the Preventative Care Initiative, a diabetes initiative, a cancer initiative. So we're working with on that in accordance with Ontario Health. And another thing that is really cool is that we are also in alliance with Ontario Health with a new tool called Moxie. Moxie is a new and up-and-coming tool that helps individuals make the best choices for their health and lifestyle to meet their goals and just really take better care of themselves. It focuses on things like diabetes, hypertension, heart health, eating right, alternative food choices that are culturally relevant, that are gonna not be too costly. So these are some of the things that Roots does, and we really strive to make sure that the well-being of our clients and our families and our community is put first, and that the BAC community does not feel like there isn't any help or any supports that they have. So with that being said, I am going to transition and welcome Maggie Millwood, who is our presenter for today.
Thank you, Lillian. I'm just going to get my screen sorted and I will begin. This will give everyone an opportunity, if you haven't grabbed a cup of tea or a glass of water yet, now is a good time to go and do that so that I can get started with you guys. All right. Let's get there. Can everyone see the screen so far?
So far, yes.
Okay, good. So bear with me. I'm not a fan of technology, but I'm not supposed to say that out loud because then the technology can hear me, and then that's not a good plan. All right. Welcome, everyone. I am thrilled to be here. It is indeed an honor to be addressing this wonderful community, and I am very grateful for being invited by Roots Community Services to speak to you all this evening. As you know, the presentation tonight is about food for life, all about nutrition and healing your body through therapeutic holistic nutrition. It is my joy to bring this to my fellow West Indian / Afro-Caribbean community. And tonight's topic is going to focus mainly on how to nourish your body using a root cause approach to managing diabetes and polycystic ovarian syndrome. So the whole idea behind it is that we're going to look at ways in which you can resonate with your own body to understand how it can heal itself naturally. I am Maggie Millwood, certified holistic nutritionist. And of course, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. So there I am, same person with the headphones on. I'm a certified holistic nutritionist, registered nutritional therapist, and the founder of my business, Perfect Health Solutions. I specialize in women's health, mainly around metabolic imbalances like menopause, diabetes, and cancer. And that's just a little bit of background on me as it regards my website, www.perfecthealthsolutions.ca. And you can find me on most social media as The Perfect Nutritionist. So I just wanted to tell you guys that I am from Jamaica. I'm the last of 12 siblings, one of whom is now living in my heart, but I'm born and raised in Jamaica. So for those of you who are participating in the video and watching on the screens, or if your screens are off, at least you know you're speaking to a fellow West Indian. So just wanted to invite you all to hold on to your questions. We're going to have a Q&A at the end, and feel free to write it down or put it in the chat if you feel comfortable with that, and I'll do my best to answer for you. So just to give you an idea of what I do and why I do it, because many people don't know what holistic nutrition is. So holistic nutrition is basically looking at the mind, the body, and the soul. It's the whole person. And that's one of the reasons why it's my passion, because I love making sure that you are treated as a whole person when you come and see me, that you're not in isolation. In other words, if you have a pain in your leg, it's not isolated from the rest of your body or from your emotions or even from any physical activity or food or nutrition that you might have participated in. Women's health and holistic nutrition is where my sweet spot is, literally my sweet spot. That's intentional. Because women, I find, on the whole, are very busy. We tend to take on a lot onto ourselves and we forget to take care of ourselves. And I have found that women, especially from West Indian, Afro-Caribbean, Black communities, are not really in touch with how our bodies are. We're not taught that even though our bodies are resilient on one level, we are not taught how to manage that resilience in a kind and loving fashion. So it's one of the reasons why I focus on women. It doesn't mean that I don't take care of gentlemen too. Of course I will. And of course, from the perspective of the root cause and examining what's going on underneath all the signs and symptoms that you might have, focusing on women's health means for sure you focus on hormones, things that hormones trigger or root causes around hormones are weight gain, fatigue, what I call the muffin top issue or the muffin top syndrome. Inflammation, estrogen loss, that's one of the famous hormones that we know about. Increased estrogen, infertility, aches and pains, sleeplessness, irritability, mood swings, and more. So tonight, to give you an idea of what I was asked to cover and what we will intentionally touch upon, is how the normal blood sugar action works in the body, what our hormones are, what diabetes is and what the root cause is and its complications, what PCOS is, which is Polycystic Ovarian Syndrome, and the related complications, and then some food supplements and lifestyle tips to help us to rebalance them naturally. So this is all about your healthy body. Most people that I speak to assume that they have a healthy body. And even if you feel your body is in complete health, sometimes we forget that health is just a snapshot in time. And really, most of the time, that healthy body of ours needs some healing. So what is it when we speak about metabolism? So for those of you, it's a big word. It's thrown around a lot. It's very easily misunderstood. So I just wanted to literally break it down for you, and so that we know that we're speaking about the same things on the same page. So metabolism is really how your body functions, and it functions in two phases or in two functionalities. One is a build-up phase, that is the anabolytic or anabolism function, where your body is consuming energy to build up new cells and maintain body tissues and help you to store energy. Then there's a catabolic phase of metabolism, which is where your body is producing energy from breaking down larger molecules into smaller ones. For example, when you are utilizing the consumption of carbohydrates in your diet and turning it into the simplest form of sugar called glucose. So every single second of the day, our body is consistently building up and breaking down, building up and breaking down. And eventually at some point, it loses its balance. It literally comes out of balance. If that happens in a long-term situation, then it becomes an imbalance, a long-term imbalance, which can turn into a disorder. And a metabolic disorder, of course, is a result of abnormal chemical reactions disrupting the body's metabolism. That turns into dysregulation and inefficiencies. And that's when we begin to develop signs and symptoms, and we feel that we are out of sync. Sometimes you feel unwell. Sometimes you don't even notice because you're not paying attention to your system. But after today's talk, I hope this will encourage you to pay attention, pay closer attention, and take charge of your health. So this slide in the slide deck is showing you what is known as the slope of health. And in the natural health world, we always look at optimal health. So not just being in balance, but being in the best balance that you can be in. And at optimal health, it's where therapeutic holistic nutrition shines, because it's not just about eating food. It's not just about getting a little bit of exercise. It's not about getting rest or reducing stress, but doing it at the best levels possible so that you can function at the best level possible. So in terms of how we live, we're either on the way to our best health or our optimal health, or we're on the opposite trajectory, opposite direction, being poor health, even going towards the end stages of life. In terms of how to maintain balance, there's always a cause and effect in the health world. And there, as a result, is the capacity for us as individuals to recognize that there's some things we can't control, and then there are other things that we can. So on the top side of the graph here, we have the conventional medical world, where you go through this transition of health issues. Maybe you start with a blood test because you had a couple of signs and symptoms and you were curious to know what could possibly be going on in your body. Maybe you had a headache and you consistently have had these headaches and you take over-the-counter drugs. Eventually, over time, you get a diagnosis of a disease. Maybe you consult with a surgeon. They start removing body parts. Maybe you get a more serious diagnosis down the road of cancer from tumor growth and so on. And you treat that with chemotherapy, but eventually it shows that your health starts to deteriorate. Those things you don't really have control over because you've made certain choices, and that's the direction your body is taking. But there are other things that you will have control over, which is more of an effect side of your health. And you might not be aware of it because of the environment that you live in might be polluted, but this is an opportunity for you to learn more. So you could be exposed to environmental pollution, toxins in your foods, vitamin and mineral deficiencies by not consuming the proper kinds of foods. These are choices that we can make every day. We can move out of the environment, we can clean the environment, we can eat better, and some things we can't have control over. But at least you know that in the combination of the two, there are some things that we do have control over when it comes to our health. So this is a shocking statistic, which isn't very old. It's 2023. Excuse me. Almost 1 in 10 Canadians aged 20 years and older have been diagnosed with diabetes. Can you believe that? That's 1/10 of all Canadians have been diagnosed with diabetes. And especially in the years leading up to the pandemic, 2016 to 2019, almost 1 in 10 Canadian adults between the ages of 20 to 79, that's almost 10% of Canadians, had diabetes. I share this because I wanted you to realize that it is much more abundant or rampant in our immediate society than we realize. And also to make you recognize that diabetes can hit you at any age. It's not necessarily an old person's illness or a young person's illness. I just wanted to re-emphasize to you that that is also to show yourself that a lot of it has to do with the choices we make in terms of our lifestyle. So in terms of Diabetes Canada and Statistics Canada, approximately 30% of Canadians self-identify as being of African, Arab, Asian, Hispanic, or South Asian descent. That wraps up for most of us on this call. 12.9% of those 30% are among the people of African and Afro-Caribbean descent. And of all Canadians, about 7.8% have diabetes. So at last count in 2023, there were 40 million Canadians, which means 3.12 million Canadians have been diagnosed with diabetes. And when it falls into the us of the 30% at the top, that turns out to be about 936,000 Canadians, of which the African Afro-Caribbean descent will show you that 112,000 at least have diabetes already. Shocking. So in order to understand diabetes, we have to address what blood sugar looks like and how it works in the body. I chose a donut intentionally, but I'm not suggesting by any means that you indulge in donuts. But donuts and other sweet pastries such as donuts, which I know a lot of our culture likes to have sweet things in general. We're sweet people by birth, literally. But I chose a donut just to remind you that these are parts of our food intake that will affect our blood sugar. So I want to tell you how blood sugar works. Blood sugar is affected by a number of hormones. But when we ingest food, say, for example, a donut, a carbohydrate, a very sweet carbohydrate, it goes into the body as what is known as a complex carbohydrate. And the body breaks down through the digestion process. It breaks down that carb into the simplest form of sugar, which the body will eventually use for energy. And the way it does that is it passes through the digestive system, eventually getting into the small intestines, getting cleared by the liver, permission granted to enter the bloodstream, and eventually get to the cells. And it does that by breaking down the foods through various enzymes, breaking them down and getting it into the bloodstream as the simplest form of sugar called glucose. Glucose is then welcomed into the cell through the support of one very important hormone called insulin. Upon the ingestion of the first bite of that donut, for example, the body will release insulin and tell the body innately that it must prepare for the welcoming of glucose into the bloodstream. Insulin, in other words, acts as an escort to allow glucose to enter the bloodstream and to get it into the cell. The input of glucose into the cell is welcomed by other cofactors, usually minerals such as chromium, magnesium, vanadium, along with the support of insulin. They're welcomed into the cell, and glucose gets a chance to convert itself to energy. There are a couple of other hormones that play an important role in how our blood sugar is affected. Cortisol is our long-term stress hormone. It's the hormone that actually keeps us alive. It protects us, but when it is out of balance, it turns into a very interruptive hormone to insulin. So the more stressed you are, in other words, is the harder it is for your insulin to work properly. Another hormone, which is really important that I didn't put up on, but I'll mention later, is melatonin, which of course your body makes to help you to fall asleep. And sleep is very important to your blood sugar balance. Ghrelin and leptin are newer kids on the block. They're newer hormones. And I just thought I'd mention them because you'll get to see how important it is for their operation as it relates to your blood sugar as well. Ghrelin is a hormone that literally makes your stomach growl when you're hungry. It growls more when you haven't had enough sleep, believe it or not. And therefore draws you into that craving mode. If you haven't gotten enough sleep, you crave more food. You crave a stronger desire to eat because ghrelin is active and growling loudly. And then leptin is the opposition hormone to ghrelin. Leptin is the hormone that shuts down our hunger. It tells us when we're full. And guess what happens to leptin when you haven't gotten a good night's sleep? It goes to sleep itself. So you're never told you're full when you haven't slept properly. How about that? So here's another way that we can track what I just shared about how the body breaks down carbohydrates and turns it into glucose. Your normal blood sugar, you'd eat, you'd digest, you'd absorb and assimilate, and eventually eliminate any waste products from that consumption of whatever carbohydrate, protein, or fat that you ate. But I chose the carbohydrate because that is the one that's most directly related to your blood sugar, which eventually, if your blood sugar goes out of balance, it turns into dreadful things like PCOS and diabetes. So you eat your food, your body stimulates gastric juices for digestion, insulin is released, and then it turns into glucose. The blood escorts it along with insulin and some other cofactors like magnesium, and you enter the cell. The cell allows it in, and with the help of the friends or the cofactors, it digests and converts that glucose into energy. The energy is then known as the molecule ATP, and then we get energy. So if consuming natural sugars or consuming carbohydrates in our diet means that we are able to convert glucose to energy. Why is it then that we get fatigued and we need to give back our energy? Does anybody know? Do you know why we need to keep getting back our energy? Well, I'll give you a hint. It's definitely not. We don't lose our energy based on our age. I've already revealed it to you. It's based on how we consume and absorb our blood sugar. So the mechanism for diabetes, also known as high blood sugar, is in contrast to normal blood sugar consumption. And like any other illness in the body, it is stimulated through time of certain chronic activities and habits that we have. If you are consistently skipping breakfast and you're consistently eating carbohydrates for breakfast and not balancing it out with other nutrients, or you're consistently eating white refined foods, white refined sugar, flour, rice, and you're not combining that with any other foods, and you've been doing this for years, or you're consistently having coffee with cream, coffee with milk, dairy milk plus sugar, then eventually you might find that you receive a diagnosis of type 2 diabetes, which is also known as high blood sugar. And as the name implies, it would resonate with you to understand that the glucose in your blood is high. And how does that happen? Well, I'm going to explain that to you in a second. But insulin resistance is another term for high blood sugar. It means that insulin is being locked out of the cell. The cell is resisting the introduction of insulin into the cell. Another name for that is metabolic syndrome. It is a cluster of symptoms that develop in conjunction with diabetes and leads you down a very slippery slope of ill health. Syndrome X is another name for metabolic syndrome or pre-diabetes as well. And fatty liver is a derivative of the whole picture. So I just wanted you to be aware of all those interchangeable names that are very similar, if not exactly the same thing as having diabetes. So here are a couple of symptoms. I hope none of you have ever experienced this, but at least it will give you an idea. Diabetes brings with it things like abdominal weight gain, fatigue, dry mouth and excessive thirst, frequent urination, blurred vision, frequent or recurring infections, especially immune issues, slow healing cuts and bruises, and even a tingling or numbness in your hands and feet. Just in case you weren't aware of how the tests work or what the tests are, this is what doctors look for in terms of assessing you for diabetes. They look for whether or not you have impaired fasting in your blood glucose levels. They look for whether or not you have high triglyceride levels or high blood pressure or even low good cholesterol. So HDL is known as the high density lipoprotein for your cholesterol measurement. And if that's low, the doctor will be alerted to say, okay, this person could be on a trajectory, not just through diabetes, but aiming for metabolic syndrome. Metabolic syndrome is when you present with diabetes, excessive weight gain around the abdomen, high cholesterol, and also high blood pressure. So it's a cluster of symptoms, and they expect this to happen if your habits don't change. The doctor will test you for HbA1c, hemoglobin A1c, in which over a period of 3 months, it will show in your blood that the glucose, the actual sugar in your blood, which is high, has stuck to your cells and coated them. And so eventually it will show a high cluster of red blood cells. The hemoglobin, the HB, is the red blood cells. It shows that it sticks to those blood cells, and that shows that your blood sugar is high. And glucose fasting is usually when you're required to abstain from eating, usually about 10 to 12 hours before the test. And it measures the milligrams of glucose per 1/10 of a liter in your blood. So that just gives you an idea of how they arrive at the diabetic conclusion. I always say to folks, if you have been diagnosed or if the doctor's told you you're pre-diabetic, treat yourself as if you are diabetic. So one of the things that people think about when they think about diabetics is they think about overconsumption of sugar, which is true. An excessive consumption of sugar over a long period of time, especially with a lack of certain things, will present diabetes in a person. But also keep in mind a lack of correct nutrients as well. So it's really important to remember that from the perspective of actually nourishing your body, that there will be deficiencies that will provoke or take your body through that period of imbalance, which could lead to diabetes. So you want to also make sure that you're having the correct nutrients in your diet as well to rebalance your system and to help to support your metabolic function. When you don't have your correct nutrients, of course, that makes it much harder for you to feel well and creates more and more imbalances like that metabolic syndrome cluster that I spoke about. And of course, as you know, I hope this isn't true for anybody, but I'm sure we've all been there at some time. An unhealthy body cannot and will not feel great. And you know why. It's completely out of balance, which is why I'm here today to teach you how to put it back into balance. So moving into polycystic ovarian syndrome, you're probably wondering how on earth these two are connected. They're more connected than you will realize. So PCOS, literally polycystic ovarian syndrome, is a cluster of hormonal imbalances in the body. It affects mostly women, but I'm going to encourage the gentlemen on the call to really pay attention to, because if you have a lady in your life and she has any of these struggles, this is a great opportunity for you to understand what she might be going through and to see how it could relate to rebalancing blood sugar, helping rebalance your hormones as well. And it is possible to rebalance your hormones and reverse PCOS. So it's a really great way to understand the root causes underneath this condition as well. To be clear, because I mentioned the hormones before, there are hormones for almost every function in the body, and hormones are simply just chemical messengers. So as it relates to blood sugar and digesting your food, of course, insulin is the key player in the digestive tract. But as it relates to reproductive health, there are some key players also, and they are estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. I'm sure you've heard of all of those, but we'll get to that in a minute. So in Canada, as it relates to PCOS, it affects 8 to 13% of women of reproductive age. So as many as 1.4 million Canadian women may be afflicted with PCOS. And that's a statistic from last year, February. And to be honest, like within our community, the West Indian, Afro-Caribbean, Black community, it is very high considering our numbers in terms of our overall total population. It's very high within our own population. Symptoms of PCOS also go undetected and undiagnosed because many of our cultural approaches are usually just to sort of override some of our symptoms, and we might not be aware that these are indicators of a deeper problem. So I just wanted to share some of the symptoms with you. There are those women, of course, who have it much more overtly and it's quite obvious, but there are others who have no idea what's going on. Symptoms like overgrowth of facial hair, acne, especially on the face, lower jaw, weight gain, sudden weight gain, especially, or a problem losing weight as well can be part of it. Mood changes, a lot goes with irritability, insulin resistance, sudden fatigue. Remember, it's tied into blood sugar, and menstrual irregularity as well, ovulation problems. So within the realm of a woman with PCOS who might be presenting with it, she'll have irregular periods and sometimes she'll have no ovulation whatsoever. Cysts in the ovaries, that's a big giveaway, and infertility or difficulty trying to conceive, male pattern baldness, so she's losing all her hair, high testosterone, which is a hormone that's present in women, but it should not be at a high level in women. And usually women with PCOS present with very high testosterone. And ironically, high testosterone is supposed to elevate sex drive, but in women, it will depress it. So what causes PCOS? What's at the root cause? What's underneath it? What's causing it is an endocrine disturbance. And the endocrine system is really the system that rebalances and keeps the hormones in their balanced state. So the main player or the main instigator of this imbalance is estrogen. Estrogen is one of the female hormones that allows conception to take place. And in a woman with PCOS, it means that the levels of estrogen are super high, they're abnormally high, and they're wreaking havoc with her body as a result. It will affect other hormones like DHEA, which is what I call the youth hormone because I can't pronounce that long name. And testosterone, which of course is predominantly a male hormone, but women have it. Progesterone is a hormone that actually allows pregnancy to take place, and cortisol as well. So estrogen, when it's out of balance and it's super high, affects all of the other hormones and throws them out of balance as well. In addition to that endocrine disruptor, there is insulin resistance around blood sugar management and blood sugar dysregulation. So you can see where that's leading that individual, that young woman of reproductive age. It's also leading her towards diabetes because her insulin is being resisted and she's not able to process her glucose properly. She may have blood sugar dysregulation, which can in the long run lead to diabetes. Poor estrogen processing in the liver and the gut means that there is a backup of estrogen in her body, which could one day, if not taken into hand and if she's not taking charge of owning her own health, it can lead to breast and endometrial cancer. And some ladies, of course, do have a genetic predisposition, but most of us, if we have been diagnosed or if we have those symptoms, it's really more about managing what's underlying it, and trying to get to the bottom of it. There are byproducts of PCOS, which are conditions that I mentioned, like insulin resistance. So the hormone imbalance leads to insulin resistance, but insulin resistance can also affect PCOS. So it's kind of which came first, the chicken or the egg, but generally it's usually a high dominance of estrogen, which triggers everything else. Birth control, especially the birth control pill, is one of the byproducts of PCOS because many medical practitioners will try to solve this issue of the symptoms, some of the symptoms, by providing the birth control pill. But the birth control pill is high estrogen, and so it doesn't really solve the problem. It could actually make it worse. Chronic inflammation can be something as simple as being diagnosed with high blood pressure at an early age. You may never have been told that hypertension is really chronic inflammation in the body, and therefore you would need to get under the root cause to understand what caused the high blood pressure, help to bring it down, and therefore protect yourself from developing further illnesses, which could become PCOS. And then there are some that are just hidden and a bit harder to diagnose, but most of them are as a result of high estrogen dominance. And if estrogen is high, then that could mean progesterone is low, and it will throw off the whole profile of your whole reproductive and menstrual cycle. PCOS can build up complications in your life, as I alluded to before. Endometrial cancer is one of them, which is a cancer of the uterine lining, which could pose a problem, of course, for fertility in the long run anyway. Infertility is another complication, abnormal bleeding in the uterus. Gestational diabetes, so that's diabetes that you get diagnosed when you're pregnant. Pregnancy, some ladies who have had PCOS and they actually are able to conceive during the pregnancy, they end up having high blood pressure because of the PCOS. So it's really important to really get to the root cause and rebalance your system even before that. Sleep apnea is where you're not able to sleep deeply throughout the night and catch your breath. Unconsciously, you lose some oxygen while you're sleeping, and that can interrupt every system in the body and all your hormones as well. So it's like literally feeding into that imbalance by not presenting with good sleep. Depression and anxiety for obvious reasons. If you can't conceive or you don't know when You're going to have your menstrual cycle. You're not ovulating. There are all sorts of things that can throw you off. Again, the insulin resistance, the inability to process your blood sugar properly can lead to eating disorders, prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome. And a woman with PCOS can present for high risk of miscarriage or premature birth. Telling you all of this not to make you worry, but to make you understand what you're dealing with, just in case you weren't aware. Now, here's a chart of how the regular menstrual cycle should behave. The lines are pink, blue, green, and orange. And the orange line, I'll start with that, is a line where the hormone in the body called the follicle stimulating hormone, it becomes highest at the beginning of the menstrual cycle. This is a 28-day cycle. And in the middle, it's assumed around the 14th day is when ovulation would take place. So in the ovaries, the follicle stimulating hormone is present to allow the egg to release and enter the fallopian tubes to be able to release itself for possible fertilization or to become an ovulation victim, so to speak. The follicle stimulating hormone is usually high at the first phase of the menstrual cycle. And at the second stage of the menstrual cycle, the green line is a luteinizing hormone and it's highest during ovulation. You'll notice that it peaks at ovulation, so does the follicle stimulating hormone peaks at ovulation, where that purple bar is right in the middle of the graph. And then progesterone, that blue line, it peaks later on in the second half of the menstrual cycle, whereas the estradiol or the estrogen, that's the actual estrogen name that happens in the menstrual cycle, it peaks just before the ovulation and then it releases. So this is what a normal menstrual cycle should look like. But in an abnormal menstrual cycle, imagine that pink line not having that gentle sloping, gradually escalating and elevating to the top, but imagine it staying high throughout the whole time until it gets to the purple bar. When it stays that high, that means it's estrogen dominance, and that estrogen dominance blocks the follicle stimulating hormone from allowing the egg to be released from the ovary. It gets trapped in the ovary, and a bunch of them over time getting trapped in the ovary, they form cysts, and that becomes polycystic syndrome, ovarian syndrome. So that person is unable to actually ovulate because they don't have that ebb and flow of the estrogen versus the progesterone going into the second phase. And because luteinizing hormone takes over in the second phase, but it has now been imbalanced, it blocks the production of the egg for fertilization or otherwise. So this is just a reinterpretation of what I just shared with you. Follicle stimulating hormone and the luteinizing hormone together, if they're in the wrong ratio here, you'll see the PCOS is formed when the luteinizing hormone is stronger than the follicle stimulating hormone and therefore blocks its activity. And the follicle stimulating hormone, FSH, is present to allow the egg to be released into the fallopian tubes and become fertilized or turn into an ovulation cycle. If it's unable to do that, then it stays in the ovary and becomes a cyst. And then testosterone gets a chance to be really high because progesterone is also low. And then that forms a facial hair, those androgenic hormone symptoms, the male pattern symptoms. And then the cysts are when the estrogen is very high and it gets trapped in the ovaries. So just to remind you that from a medical perspective, the birth control pill is provided and prescribed, but is often not a balancing solution for the woman who has to take it because it makes her estrogen higher in the long run. Okay, so how do we rebalance? Yay, we get to the exciting part now. I just wanted to just thank you again for being on the call. And I hope that you have enjoyed what I've been sharing so far. How do we rebalance the body? Obviously with food. This is what a holistic nutritionist will bring to the table. We do food, lifestyle, and supplementational healing in a therapeutic dose. But did you know that from the holistic perspective, you're also going to consider all the other parts of your lifestyle that can help you to support and reset your metabolic rate, your metabolism. And sleeping is one such thing that can help you to reset your metabolism. So I thought I would share with you because believe it or not, this happened just a few years ago. I've forgotten the actual year. I think it might have been 2021 that the World Health Organization eventually has put sleep as part of the pillars of good health that are recommended. So it used to be nutrition and exercise, but now they've added sleep. So apparently sleep just graduated to being part of a healthy lifestyle. So here are a few tips to just help you to get a deeper sleep, just things that you can do for free on your own. Reset with consistency. So I encourage you to go to bed and wake up at the same time on a daily basis. If you've not been doing that, don't freak your body out. Just reset every 5-10 minutes every night. And if, for example, you're trying to go to bed earlier and you normally go to bed at 11:30, then tonight go to bed at 11:15. Does that make sense? You can also reset with eating or consuming your last meal of the day a little bit earlier. So let's say you were going to bed early and you were going on time every single day. And let's say you're going to bed at 10, but you tended to eat at 8 p.m. at night. That's not going to give your body enough time to digest your food. And so while you're sleeping, your body will still be trying to digest food. That will be really bad for your sleep, and your sleep will be disrupted, not to mention how insulin plays a role when you are not digesting properly while you're sleeping. And then the third one I'd recommend, it's harder in Canada, but it's still important just to reset your circadian rhythm or to reset that sleep-wake balance, to expose your eyes to daylight as soon as you wake up in the morning. I hope you're writing down your questions if you have them. So nutrition is the only remedy that can bring full recovery and can be used with any treatment. So remember that food is our best medicine. What you eat is very important. And Dr. Bernard Jensen, one of my health heroes personally, he said this. He died in 2001. He was a favorite of my own grandma. She actually knew him. And he was a big champion of gut health and making sure that we eat for nourishment, not just for fun. So the foods you choose to eat do make a difference. And it's information that your body understands. So if you put in junk, your body will receive junk. It won't know what to do with it, but because it can't process it properly, it will end up over time keeping that junk, and that junk will corrupt your cells and turn into inflammation. And inflammation is at the root of most disease. And the longer the inflammation stays with you, it's more likely your body will convert it to the disease, the metabolic disorder. And before you know it, you'll be diagnosed with a disease and you'll be on that slippery slope that I showed you at the beginning. So remember, you are what you eat, but you're also whatever you eat, whatever that eats, you are also that. So keep in mind, if you're having animal protein, then you must make sure that you know what that animal is eating as well to serve your health well. Foods that create imbalances. I thought I would just give you a quick overview, give you something to walk away with. You can count it on your hands. So foods that create imbalances are synthetic sugar. And by that, I mean not natural fruit sugar. I mean synthetic sugar like white refined sugar, sugar that's found in a package, not sugar cane, for example, but sugar that has been ground to a white fine powder. That's really, really bad for you. Alcohol, overconsumption of caffeine, utilizing on a long-term habit basis anything that is processed and packaged in the food world. It doesn't mean that you can't have packaged foods. It means you must read your labels. It means that you must not overconsume them. It certainly means that you must not give in to driving through the drive-through at McDonald's and buying their food. And I am not afraid to say that. But I wanted to also show you that the same kinds of foods that create imbalances in PCOS are the same kinds of foods that create diabetes. Isn't that interesting? So Here are some nutrients to support diabetes and PCOS. Get out your pen and paper, now's the time. I think there's some people in the chat, but I'll have to check after. Yeah, so I wanted to just call your attention to this photograph. This is an example of how your plate should look and how you should try to make it look as often as you can. These are nutrients that help to support your overall health and will help to support and protect you if you've been diagnosed with diabetes, if you've been diagnosed with PCOS, or if you have any of those symptoms, or if you just want to protect yourself from getting any such blood sugar imbalance disorder. So you want to focus on whole foods. You want to focus on foods that don't require a description on the package. You want to focus on real foods because your body understands real food as the information that makes it function the best. A rainbow of color is also very important for your plate. So keep that in mind. And here are a couple of nutrients that are very important to help you through PCOS. So let's say, for example, you've had a diagnosis or you have a suspicion that you could have a blood sugar issue as it relates to PCOS especially, or even just a blood sugar issue in general, because remember, that is one of the connected conditions for PCOS, having insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome. So foods and supplements to support deficiencies, the areas that you're lacking, which might have led to PCOS, are B vitamins. You can get a great source of B vitamins from foods like chicken, beef, fish, eggs, leafy greens, and beans. And I would be remiss to tell you, I know lots of us think about the budget, but I would be remiss if I didn't tell you that you want your animal protein to be grass-fed, organic as best as possible. And you want your leafy greens and your sources of beans and eggs to be farm-raised, organic, non-pesticided, all those things, because all those things add up. Toxins, pesticides, fillers, plastic holders. There are lots of plastics in cans that can be toxic to your system. All of those things add up over time to become endocrine disruptors. Remember, I mentioned that PCOS is formed in the endocrine system. So anything that's an endocrine disruptor, you want to stay away from. Plastics are a big one. And also using a microwave with plastics would be a big thing that you'd stay away from. And the hand sanitizer that we have been using for, 3 or 4 years now is literally an endocrine disruptor. Those are things that are bad for consumption for all people, but in particular women who have an inclination towards PCOS or any of the other metabolic disorders. Vitamin D, sunshine. Here in Canada, it's a little bit harder for us to get vitamin D from sunshine. We must strive to get it no matter what the color of your skin. But it is really important if you have a dark skin tone, if you have that deeper, richer color to your skin tone, you want to make sure that you supplement with vitamin D in this country, because between May and October, those are the only times that the rays of the sun actually penetrate your skin. Because we have deeper skin tones when you come from the Caribbean, your body has extra melanin, which blocks and protects you from burning. And as a result, it blocks the absorption of vitamin D into your body. So it's important to supplement with a really good vitamin D. You would want to know the source of where that vitamin D supplement came from. So that's a tip. And eat organic, non-farm raised fish, organic eggs, cremini mushrooms. Those are also sources of vitamin D, especially salmon as a fish, an oily fish. Vitamin E, you can get it as a supplement, CoQ10 or omega fish oil, but it's also available with nuts and seeds and olive oil and avocado oil. Calcium, I usually don't recommend that you supplement with the calcium. I would prefer that you got it from food. Here are some great options: broccoli, tahini, almonds, fermented non-GMO cheese. I have a particular brand that I love. It's called La Centra. And kelp. Kelp is the highest plant-based source of calcium. It is a seaweed and it's also highly rich in iodine. And iodine is a high mineral nutrient that's important for your thyroid, which can also throw you off and create PCOS in the body. And zinc. Zinc is really great from shellfish like oysters and mussels, well, seafood rather, oysters and mussels, beans, seeds, and nuts as well. You can also get it in pumpkin seeds specifically. And here's what a typical blood sugar balance plate would look like. So when you're sitting down to eat, a lot of people say, well, Maggie, what should I have on my plate? And I would say, try and balance out your consumption of fats, carbs, protein, and veggies. You want to make sure that your plate is almost on an even keel, if not a little bit more of the veggies. Veggies are carbohydrates, but they're considered to be low on the glycemic index. The glycemic index is basically a way of measuring how quickly carbs convert to glucose in the body. So for example, if you were having a meal with salmon and broccoli, say you were having grilled salmon with broccoli, and that's all you were having, then your blood sugar would convert very slowly because the broccoli would have high fiber, and fiber slows the release of glucose into the bloodstream. So it would be a very normal way for the body to absorb sugar and to convert it into glucose. And there wouldn't be any pressure or stress in the body to convert it into glucose. But if you were having a glass of apple juice, for example, and you drank that full on force, one shot, then your body would have to quickly convert that instant sugar, and it would have to convert and present insulin ready to uptake it into the bloodstream and take it into the cell. And if you have that habit of constantly having just sugar in your bloodstream, then your body's going to get tired. Insulin is going to slow down in its production. It's not going to be able to absorb as quickly. The cell is going to get tired. It's sort of like if you think of insulin as having a function like a gas station. Insulin has two functions. It will pump gas into your car, or it will store it in the gas tank at the gas station. And the way it does that in the body is that it will push the glucose into your cell. And if it can't push anymore into the cell, if the cell won't let it have any more, then it will store it in your liver, and it will store it in your muscles. And when it starts to store it in your liver, you eventually could become diagnosed with fatty liver disease, which is something nobody wants. So basically, you need to treat insulin well and not consistently spike it by absorbing sugary drinks nonstop 24/7. The other thing that's really important is that when you consistently do that, if you think of your body like the cells of your body, if you think of it like a house with a door and you're inside, and insulin brings a pizza to your door, and the pizza is the glucose, and insulin is one of the friends that is allowing the transportation of the pizza into your cell, which is your house. The pizza boy is going to bring some of his friends. He's going to bring magnesium, and he's going to bring vanadium, and it's going to bring chromium. And these are the cofactors along with insulin that will deliver the pizza, which is glucose. I'm not telling you to have a pizza, but you know what I mean. He's delivering the pizza. He's going to knock on the door of the cell, and you're going to open it and take in the pizza and say, thank you very much, insulin and friends. I really appreciate the fact that you delivered glucose to my door. But if the pizza boy keeps coming back over and over again with insulin and his friends, and they keep knocking on the door, eventually you're inside, you've had enough pizza for one afternoon, you're tired of this door knocking business, you've had enough, so you won't open the door. The cell will resist. That is insulin resistance. And when insulin sees that the blood sugar is high, the pizza boy is outside with the glucose, insulin will take the pizza away and put it in your liver. And that's insulin resistance literally leads to a fatty liver, and insulin resistance can also affect you and cause PCOS. So here's some lifestyle tips for blood sugar and PCOS. Make sure you get a good night's sleep. Remember, I told you about resetting your circadian day and night rhythm. Try to get deep sleep, because remember, sleep apnea, that sleeplessness where you lack oxygen, you don't sleep deeply, that's one of the complications of PCOS, and it just becomes a vicious cycle. Reduce your stress. Excuse me. One of the ways I recommend you reduce stress is practicing deep breathing on a daily basis. Regular moderate exercise, that looks like cycling, swimming, gentle walking, not overdoing it, basically, because that adds more stress to your body, which you don't need. You want to stay hydrated, and staying hydrated isn't just about drinking water, right and cute. It's also about making sure that you balance your body with good minerals. One of those good minerals is real salt, real whole food salt, not table salt. Table salt has sugar in it. It has additives and anti-caking agents that are not good for you. But whole salts like Celtic salt and Himalayan salt, those are good, and they have like over between 65 to 85 different minerals, including high sources of magnesium and potassium, respectively. And try to maintain a healthy body weight by having a healthy body fat ratio. Here are some quick tips for blood sugar and PCOS supplements. If you feel that you are having some blood sugar issues, or you're just trying to make sure that you're rebalancing your blood sugar, taking in chromium, magnesium, vanadium, especially if you've been diagnosed with pre-diabetes, is a good idea. Balancing those deficiencies with ACEs and zinc. ACEs is vitamin A, C, E, and selenium, which are really good for PCOS, as well as great for blood sugar management and diabetes support. Having a good multi, make sure it has manganese. That's really good for PCOS as well. Great non-animal sources of protein would be spirulina, which is a blue-green algae, and non-GMO soy protein. Inositol is honorary vitamin B, so it's part of the B complex usually, but you can also have it in higher portions, especially for PCOS. But even for diabetes or pre-diabetes metabolic syndrome, it's still good to take because it lets the cell become more sensitive and less resistant. Milk thistle is a great herb that you can use at least 200 milligrams of silymarin for proper liver function, which of course, if you remember with PCOS, the high estrogen in the liver can't clear it as quickly. So supporting with something like milk thistle could help. Alpha lipoic acid is a great antioxidant. It protects the body, like all the rainbows of foods I mentioned. Those are antioxidant rich foods because of the multiple colors. Alpha lipoic acid is a supplement that will help to reduce the nerve tingling in the hands and feet because it's a protective antioxidant specifically for diabetics with nerve issues. L-carnitine is a great amino acid that you can take to help your body to begin burning fat at a cellular level. All right, I want you to remember as I wrap up that the goal is not to do a lot of things all at once. The goal is to do the right things. So join me in taking charge of your health and do the right things. I want you to be well. What could be your next step? If you want to know more from me personally, please jump on a complimentary discovery call. It's about 30 minutes. You can go to my website, www.perfecthealthsolutions.ca, and let's chat on how I can help you feel great. And you will get premium holistic and individualistic healing support from me for your health journey as we identify root causes together. You will feel fully alive, I promise, and empowered to take charge of your health and well-being. I love moving you from feeling stressed and frenzied to feeling fabulous about your health again. And I guarantee you'll get more energy, promise. So one of my favorite testimonials I share with you here. Maggie listens and challenges you to think about what you're doing. She delivers what you need with a compassionate, non-judgmental heart. No judgment, people. Not only will you get great recommendations and instructions and results, but you will gain a supportive friend, Pat R. And last but not least, it has been my pleasure serving you this evening. Please become the healthiest version of yourself. Don't delay. Find a holistic nutritionist to take care of you today. Feel free to book a complimentary call with me. perfecthealthsolutions.ca, and thank you. It's been my pleasure. Please let me know if you have any questions. I'm here to support you.
Thank you so much, Maggie, for that information. That was so
Woof.
useful. A lot to take in, but
Yes.
very good to know. It's prevention is always better than cure, is what they
Mhm.
say. So at this time, we are just going to let anybody in here know that Roots is always willing and able to support anybody that wants to take their pathway to wellness journey. And considering that it is Black History Month, I believe, and my organization and my team believes that taking your power and being able to utilize your power in the best way possible is an amazing thing. And we as the BAC community, we don't always have to rely on the outside systems that make us feel not included and make us feel like there is something wrong with us. PCOS is something that a lot of Black women deal with. And when you go to the doctor, they'll tell you that, oh, it's just period cramps. Oh, just take Advil. And I think it's very disheartening. So when you have someone like Maggie that's so educated, that's telling you that they are putting you on birth control as a fix when there's deeper issues to go on, I think those are very, very important things to know. And when we talk about diabetes and how we can take control of that. So Jamal just moves to the next slide. Like I said, we are Roots Community Services. We are located in downtown Brampton and in Mississauga. We serve Peel, the region of Peel and Halton. We're open weekdays 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. You can visit us online. You can call us. You can email us. We are always ready to help. And even if we don't have the services that you need, we're always ready to refer and always ready to make that warm handoff. We have a lot of partnerships. For example, we have a primary care physician list that is full of Black physicians that are ready to take ready to take patients in the GTA. So if anybody needs assistance with that, we are more than willing to help out, do that warm handoff. We also have some diabetes clinics coming up for free testing and a whole bunch of stuff. We have sites for cancer screening, for breast cancer. So whenever you're ready to take that step, feel free to let Roots help you out. And if there's any questions for Maggie, you can type it in the chat or you can unmute your microphone and ask her.
When we are now in the Q&A segment, if you guys want to type your question in the chat, or if you feel comfortable, you can also come off mute and answer it. Again, like I said before, it is a discussion. So whichever one you're comfortable with, please feel free.
Deja in the chat says, there's an organization with the same name in California. Is this the same one? You're in Canada. Yes, Deja, we are in Canada. We are in Ontario. Yeah, we are Canada-based, Ontario, Brampton.
Was she talking about Roots or was she talking about me?
She said there's an organization with the same name in California.
Roots Community?
Yeah, are you talking about Roots Community Services?
Yes, she is.
Okay.
Yes, she is.
Chelsea has a question. Go ahead, Chelsea.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I was just gonna ask, I feel like as just being a young person who wants to be, I guess, preventative in these issues, I feel like when we go to our physicians, they usually have an attitude of, oh, you're too young to be tested for this or things of that nature. I guess I would ask, like, how is the best way to kind of get to be preventative as well as to ensure that you can actually get these tests done? Because I feel like whenever I'm trying to get them done, it's usually like that kind of barrier.
What test specifically are you talking about?
Let's say as for example, like PCOS, sorry. Like for example, if I'm speaking to my doctor, let's just say for example, if there's an irregular menstrual cycle, they'll be like, maybe we should try this before we get there. But it's like, as a person like experiencing it and living with it, it's kind of like you know your body, but sometimes there's like that pushback from the actual physician.
Well, if I understand you correctly, Chelsea, and thanks for your question, by the way, if you have a diagnosis of PCOS, well, for sure, from a natural perspective, I think the thing I wanted to convey to you was, if you already have a diagnosis, there are things that you know that you can do to help to rebalance your system, because you now know the root cause of, at least 3 or 4 reasons why you could have PCOS. And a lot of it is lifestyle and blood sugar related. But if you have a particular challenging medical practitioner, which many of us do in these days, I would suggest that you remind yourself that it is your body, you're with yourself 24/7, and you are aware of the symptoms that you are having. And I would start logging it, like, log when you have your period, when you miss your period, log what you had for the day, and give a sense to yourself of what you are doing to maintain proper balance, as well as looking for triggers that might have irritated your system. That's one way that you can take charge of your health. in terms of fighting to get your results or get your blood tests, I believe if you really negotiate with your doctor, they will, in other words, harass them. They will have to give you a proper explanation. And go prepared, like before you go prepared with some natural health approaches and ask them, because the truth is doctors don't get a chance to dig deeply into nutrition. So the more informed their patient is the more challenged they might be, but they might also begin to dig and find out for themselves to be able to help you. And if in fact you're finding that your resistance is so strong that you're really not getting the support, well, you could try getting another doctor, or this might be an out-of-pocket expense if you don't have insurance, but naturopathic doctors will take you very gently along the road of getting the proper hormonal panels and helping you to figure out what your root cause might be specifically. Because for some people, it could be just a matter of really resetting your blood sugar habits and everything works. For others, it could be a little bit harder. So if you can afford it, and you have insurance, most naturopaths I know welcome direct billing with insurance, and you could definitely get them to support you if your medical doctor really isn't giving you the best results. I hope that helps.
What I'm gathering from your answer is almost like you have to be accountable for yourself, because sometimes the doctors may not have that accountability for you. Okay,
100%, 100%.
Perfect. Thank you
It's
so
your
much.
health. You're welcome.
Yes.
My pleasure.
We have another question by Jacqueline in the chat. She says, are the use of low-dose estrogen birth control pills over a long period of time, 1 to 2 years plus, does it trigger to cause PCOS in young women?
I don't think so, Jacqueline. It depends on why you went on birth control in the first place. It's a great question, but put it this way. Once you put something synthetic that is not real into your system, even if it regulates certain aspects, it can block other pathways. So it wouldn't cause it, like the word cause wouldn't be the right word, but it could make it worse, or it could throw your body out of balance. If, for example, you took it and you were unaware that maybe you had the underlying aspects of PCOS. So say,
Sorry
for
to
example,
interrupt, Maggie. She said just as an oral contraceptive. The reasoning behind taking.
Sorry. Yes, of
Yeah.
course. Exactly. So I was just about to say that. Thanks, Lillian. So say, for example, if you were taking it just as an oral contraceptive because you are trying to, just support your life, maybe protect you from getting pregnant, you're not quite ready, whatever your reasons. If you did that and you were unaware that you might have had difficulty conceiving because of an underlying condition that could be PCOS, then it would just mask it. That's the first thing. The second thing, it wouldn't cause it, but it would elevate the estrogen. So it would exacerbate the condition. It would possibly make it worse because you are now putting synthetic estrogen into your system, which will block your menstrual flow for a certain time, and you're resetting your body's natural rhythms. So the main answer is it wouldn't cause it, but it could cause complications, especially if you were unaware or unable to listen to the rhythm of your own body. I highly recommend that I know it's hard, but sometimes it's better to come off all birth control, give yourself a chance to reset and understand how your body works. Even if you don't have a diagnosis of PCOS, it's just so important to know how your body works. As a woman, especially. Men too. Men go through all sorts of funny hormone things and they're unaware, but I don't know men who get PCOS. So I hope that answers your question.
We have another question from Lady C. Lady C says, could substituting white sugar for honey help your blood sugar?
110%, Lady C. Like, for example, I know, don't feel guilty if you have it in your house, but the white sugar has no place in any of our homes. Please get rid of it, throw it out the door, sell it to somebody that you don't love, whatever you want to do. But white sugar is like the worst thing you can put in your body. So if you're going to move to honey, I'll give you a caution. The caution is it is a natural substitute as a sweetener. It can be very healthy because some good sources of honey will have good minerals, which are great for your system. But unfortunately, because of our lifestyle in Canada where we're less active, and also because culturally we also may just be more prone to not converting carbohydrates to glucose as easily. When you have an overconsumption of fructose, which is what honey is, it can turn into fatty liver. So just be careful of how much honey you have, but I would definitely, if you're going to use it as a step towards health, get rid of the white sugar for sure and go for your honey, no problem, but have it in moderate doses.
And we have a question from Kayla. Kayla says, can diet help with PCOS symptoms?
Of course, that's what we were doing all along. Yes. What do you want to know specifically about your diet around PCOS symptoms? 100%. Food being put into your system can make a huge difference to your symptoms, because there are a lot of the reasons why PCOS develops is related to the very way that your body processes blood sugar. Does that make sense? I hope so.
I'm just gonna add a little bit here back to Chelsea's question. I remember having a family friend that was really struggling with her menstrual cycle and all the symptoms of PCOS, and going to her doctor. It wasn't a family doctor, just a walk-in clinic, because she didn't have one, and literally seeing almost every doctor in there and them telling her, oh, it's just stress, oh, you're in school. And I remember it was after 2021, when COVID was kind of dying down, was when she's like, you know what, enough is enough, to the point where it's like she hadn't gotten her period for 8 months, like 8 months, no period. And they're telling her it's stress. She was on birth control. And I remember she finally went to a different clinic. And she told the doctor, listen, I want to be tested. This is what I want. She did her research. She went and she basically demanded what she wanted. And she got a referral to a gynecologist that finally told her. They did an ultrasound of her uterus, and she was like, yeah, you have PCOS. And she went back to the clinic and she's like, I was right all along. But at that point, they were like, oh, a lot of women miss their period. Sometimes it's stress, it's kind of hard to figure out. So I think it's really about advocating for yourself and really putting your foot down, because I think with the healthcare system in Canada, you kind of go into a walk-in clinic and it's like they barely even look at you and then you're out of there. So it becomes such a frustrating thing trying to advocate for yourself. But I believe just finding the right place and finding the right physician that is going to listen. After all, like, what is OHIP for, right? So just to add my 2 cents on Chelsea's question.
Absolutely, Lillian, because the way you can advocate for yourself too is by tracking your symptoms so that you're sure, because they put doubt in your mind. So if you're sure of seeing certain symptoms, you've informed yourself about what the root causes could be and how your symptoms could manifest, and you're tracking your own lifestyle and habits, and you're still seeing the same thing, even though you've changed certain things, then you have a good case to start with. And then if you've researched and you're advocating for your own health, and you have that strength of knowing that, hey, I could be right about this, and I'm with myself 24/7. I know my body a little bit better than the doctor, I think. It's not that you know everything, it's just that you know yourself. That's really important. And that's why the birth control pill is kind of sneaky, because if you are already using it, you might not know what is underlying, because it's not going to reveal it to you.
So we have it's like a couple minutes to 7:30, and Maggie said she would be here till 7:30. Very generous of her. We have one last question from our very own Jamal. Jamal says, are there any key differences in managing PCOS in women who are pregnant versus women who aren't?
That's a great question. Well, I think this one is more of an individualistic question. It's really based on the individual and how they conceived and how long they had PCOS and how old they are and what weight gain they'd took place in pregnancy, and maybe a little bit around whether or not they were even more of the metabolic syndrome kind of profile. Because, for example, the one thing I'd say, which is actually no different to a woman who is not pregnant, is just manage your blood sugar. Make sure that you utilize all the things that I shared with you today. Utilize looking at your nutrient deficiencies, making sure, you know, as a pregnant woman, obviously you're doing all the prenatal care, preferably utilizing a natural health approach, making sure you're moving your body, making sure that you're getting enough rest. And then, of course, looking at if you had the diagnosis of the PCOS and looking at, you know, managing your estrogen dominance. But it would be the same if you weren't pregnant, except you'd have to manage it a little bit more closely based on your individual profile. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, thank you, Jamal. That's a beautiful question. I love it. Coming from a gentleman too. That's even better.
So it is now 7:30. So our time is up, folks. I want to thank everyone for coming out and joining this great discussion. And we are going to be planning a lot more events like this. So we hope to see you more. And if anybody has any questions for Maggie or wants to connect with Maggie in any way, do not forget her company that's right at the back on her background, Perfect Health Solutions. And Roots is always here to assist anyone with any resources. So thank you so much for joining. It was really nice to see everybody.
Well, I just wanted to tell you thank you also for, you know, opening up your community to me. I really appreciate it, Lillian and Jamal and Kristen. I appreciate your invitation to support my fellow West Indian Afro-Caribbean people. I think it's really important, just as one of the folks in the chat put, it's really important for people of color to advocate for their health, and you have to do it twice as much. So I think it's no accident that you chose Black History Month, because I think it's really important to remind yourselves it's not about the color of your skin or about oppression of your souls. It's about knowing that you have a place in this world and you need to really powerfully move forward and advocate for your own life and your own health. So I hope that impacts and resonates with you all. Take care, and it's been a pleasure being with you.
Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.